Right. Ambrosia and Terry, if you can take over admitting people, we'll go ahead and get started. We're just a minute or two after 9. I also need to turn my video on. My name is Zach. I'm the administrative assistant for the Circle of Care. And I also will be helping with some technical assistance today. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Just wanted to go through a couple of things here. CEUs will be issued for those who attend the training in full both days. You do not need to sign up for them. They will be issued automatically. And then if you are an educator needing professional development hours, I will drop a link in the chat. There will be a sign up sheet. And those are just for educator professional development hours, okay? So we got those. I'm going to share my screen here. We've got one other thing I wanted to show y'all. If you guys look in the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a button down here that says more. You've got a lot of other buttons down here too. You're looking for one that says resources. If you don't have it, click on the more button and then you'll click on that. It'll pull up a drop-down menu to the right over here. And you see you've got a few different buttons up here, links, documents. The links, the breakout room or the educator PDH sign up link is in there. Again, I will drop it in the chat too. There's also a lot of documents in there, a lot of resources that we'll be going through as we do this training. I'll be dropping those links in the chat as well. So if you can't find this, it's okay. Not a problem. And that is about all I've got. Again, thank you all for coming. Um, I'm here for technical assistance. My name is Zach. Again, I'll put my email in the chat too. And if you guys need anything, I will do my best to help you out on my end as best as I can. Um, I will, like I said, I'll be here. I'll be available. And this is a very interactive training too. That was the last thing I was going to mention. So those documents that I mentioned will be, like I said, I'll be dropping those in the chat. They're what you guys can take with you. And with all that said, I will pass this on to, I believe, Ambrosia.
Yes, good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Ambrosia Branson. I am the project coordinator for the Circle of Care, or the little ringleader of our wonderful team that we have. We're so excited to have all of you guys here today. It's such a bittersweet moment for our whole team, though, as this is our last Threads of Hope training. And so we're super excited that all of you were able to attend this last session that we have. And we're just excited to get into the content of the training material. But before Jessica, she's our ringleader. Yay, Ambrosia. That's what I like to say. I'm the little ringleader for those of you that know me. But before we get into the content of the training today, I wanted to tell you guys, for those of you that may not know about our program, the Circle of Care, I kind of wanted to tie in for us how the Circle of Care is connected with our training, the Threads of Hope training. So Jessica, do you care to share your screen for us? Wonderful. So again, thank you guys all for being here today for our fifth and final Threads of Hope training, weaving support for children grieving a substance use related death. So I wanted to say a huge thank you to our funders. So the Circle of Care project is funded through the Illinois Department of Human Services Division of Substance Use Prevention and Recovery, with some of our funds coming from the American Rescue Plan Act. So we want to say a huge thank you to our funders. If it wasn't for our funding, we would not be able to be here today providing all of all of these amazing resources and training for you guys. I also want to say a huge thank you to the Illinois Family Resource Center, as well as the Our House. So if you guys aren't familiar with the Circle of Care, our program actually falls underneath the umbrella of the Illinois Family Resource Center. They're another statewide grant-funded project, and the IFRC has been around, I think, here at the beginning of April. They're going to be celebrating 10 years. So it's really because of the amazing work that the Illinois Family Resource Center was able to do across the past 10 years, which is how the Circle of Care project got funded. So a huge thank you to Nancy Phillips and Christina Banda and all of the amazing work that they do with the IFRC. We also want to say a huge thank you to the Our House. So they are the lead agency for both the Illinois Family Resource Center and the Circle of Care. We are so thankful that they, wanted to do both of these programs, and we are just so thankful for you, the Our House, and for being just a great employer. So now at this time, what I want us to do is I'm going to have you guys drop in the chat a little bit of an introduction for us. So if you guys could just drop in the chat, we'd love to get to know you guys a little bit more. Recognize some familiar faces and names, but we would love for you guys to put in there your name, what organization you're with, and what do you want to walk away with from this training. We're going to be spending a lot of time together in the next 2 days. So we really want to know from you guys, what is it that you're wanting to walk away with? So again, don't forget to drop your name, what organization you're with. If you're not with an organization, like Jessica just put in the chat in regards to like natural helpers, just tell us a little bit more about you guys. Also, here in a second, I'm going to start telling you guys a little bit more about the circle of care, but also we're going to be pulling up a poll now at this time. So for those of you that work for grant funded programs, you probably know that your funders always may have some additional information that they want you to collect. So at this time, we're going to pop up a poll, and in this poll, we're going to ask you guys your interest in our training, as well as how you heard about either the Circle of Care, Threads of Hope, or both of them. And then I think at the end of day two maybe is whenever oh no, this isn't our duplicated poll, I don't think. So yeah, if you guys could fill that out, and then Jessica, I'll have you go on to the next slide and I'll tell you guys a little bit more about the Circle of Care. So for those of you guys that don't know what the Circle of Care is, we are a 1 year statewide grant funded project. So you guys heard that right. 1 year is what we've been funded for. And so our fiscal year started at the beginning of July, so we will be wrapping up the Circle of Care project at the end of June. But I always like to tell people, don't worry, we've got a sustainability plan in place. After our year of funding is up, the Illinois Family Resource Center, they're going to do the upkeep of the things that we've created with the Circle of Care. But we are a 1 year statewide grant funded project, and really what we're aiming to do in this 1 year is build this network of support for children, teens, and families who have experienced grief or loss due to substance use related death and disorders. So also in our 1 year, which is why all of you are here today, we're wanting to train as many of our natural helpers. So people in communities that naturally interact with kiddos within their personal and professional roles. We're wanting to train and equip them on how to respond confidently and comfortably to child's grief that they may be experiencing related to substance use. And so with our program, we have 4.5 components to this amazing project. The first being our grief support services directory. So we have an amazing researcher on our team. Her name is Megan Reagan. Some of you may recognize Megan because she is down in our Region 5 area. But she has created this amazing grief support services directory that highlights all of the current clinical and non-clinical grief resources, services, and supports that we have here in the state of Illinois. I will go into more detail about the directory tomorrow and actually show you guys a little bit of what the directory looks like. We also have our online resource toolkits. So we want these toolkits, they're created based on the developmental age of kiddos. So we have 3 different types of toolkits: ages 0 to 5, 6 to 12, and then 13 to 18. And inside of these toolkits are various resources that our natural helpers can use whenever they're working with or interacting with these kiddos who are experiencing grief related to substance use related loss, or just, substance use in the family. And these are completely free. We want everyone to know about the toolkits. We're looking at next week having a second phase of the toolkits up, because one of the things that we've been asking people for feedback in the trainings is to go in and look at the toolkits and see if there's any resources and materials that they would like, any topics they would like additional information or resources on. So stay tuned next week to see the rest of our toolkits up on our website. We also have our Threads of Hope training, which is our community-based training, which is why you're all here today. And we also have our comfort bags for kids. So in our project, we were able to purchase 14,400 comfort bags for kids. So you guys heard that right, 14,400 people. And all of you that are attending the training today, you can request these bags for free. We want to give them out to you guys for free. Really, with the comfort bags, they are created based on youth and teen bags and English and Spanish bags. And inside of these bags, they have comforting, oh, Jessica's got it right, one of them right now. Inside of these bags, they have comforting items for kiddos who have experienced some type of stressful or traumatic event. We've got amazing books, we've got journals, we've got a Mimble ball, which you guys will learn about later, wooden hearts and markers for an activity. We've got lots of great things in there. So if you guys are interested in receiving any of those comfort bags, please be sure to fill out the evaluation following this training. The last component that we have to our project is the Handle with Care initiative. And after this, I swear, Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you. And you guys will, Ambrosia will be done talking, I swear. It'll be on to the good stuff. But with the Handle with Care initiative, this is an initiative that was created in West Virginia back in 2007, 2009. And since then, it's trickled down into the state of Illinois through our Drug Endangered Children Alliances, as well as through the Safe to Help program. And so, with the Circle of Care, I always like to tell people we're not reinventing the wheel here, people. We are jumping on the bandwagon and promoting this initiative across the state. And so, this is an initiative where we have law enforcement and educators who create this partnership essentially. And so, say, I always just like to give a quick example because I feel like it makes most sense about what Handle with Care is. And so, say if we have a child the night before at home who has experienced something potentially stressful, potentially traumatic, maybe a domestic violence situation at home, if a community has this Handle with Care initiative established, what would happen is if law enforcement get called out to the home, they will send a message to the educators at that child's school, and all that they say is handle little Timmy with care. They don't give any other context to what little Timmy went through the night before, just handle him with care. From then on, with the Circle of Care, as well as we've been partnering with the SIU School of Medicine Center for Rural Health and Social Service Development, Liesel Winger. And so, what we're able to do is we're able to train the educators to know that whenever they receive that message from law enforcement, handle with care, and say if little Timmy shows up to school the next day and if he's acting out or having any behavioral issues, they can provide Timmy with whatever additional support it is that he may need. So, we do have some discussion sessions. Actually, our next one is next week. So, if you're interested in getting this initiative established in this community, again, whenever you fill out the evaluation, there will be a little box and we can send you registration information for those discussion sessions. So now at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. Everyone's probably like, Ambrosia, get off this screen. But thank you guys for listening to our little Circle of Care spiel. We're so excited to be here with you guys. And again, at this time, I want to turn it over to Jessica. She is our amazing trainer on our team. We've gotten raving reviews about the Threads of Hope training, so we're so excited to have all of you here today to just learn from her in her amazing ways. So, Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ambrosia. I don't think anyone does not want to hear from you. You are wonderful and such a great speaker. So just to put up where I felt like there was a put down. We love hearing from you. So thank you, Ambrosia. I am so grateful. I'm so grateful to be here with you all. This is our last training. Just as Ambrosia said, it's bittersweet. I've had such a pleasure just getting to know the state of Illinois, the helpers in the community, and watching everyone collaborate and how you all work together as a community. It's inspiring. So thank you for allowing me into that space. Right here to the side, you could see a little bit more of my professional experience. I've worked in hospice, child bereavement, school programming, crisis response. I also was a children's counselor at the Hazelton Betty Ford Foundation, working with children who were impacted by a loved one's substance use disorder. And so the integration of all that work, I started out in bereavement camps actually, and that was my first exposure of watching community members, clinical, non-clinical, natural helpers, people from all different walks, recognize that being grief informed, understanding what grief care is, and helping children talk about it early on and provide those resources and strategies at those times actually was a wonderful gift, because there are a lot of people out here who have never been able to talk about what has happened, their grief and loss. And then to watch a 12-year-old say things that at 40, 50-year-olds we struggle to say because we are a grief adverse and pain adverse culturally type of way within this world. was powerful. And you really got to see the preventative part of what that does for a child. To go back more, yes, there's the professional side, but I am a child with a lived experience. My first loss was at 4 years old when my uncle died from gang-related violence. There was substance use disorder and addiction in my home. And so these were different components that when I found this work, I actually found myself revisiting and understanding it from that lens, but never knew that this field existed for children. And so when I found it, I dug my nails in super hard and deep. And so I am just grateful to partner with all of you lovely people doing this work and being a part of a community of helpers. I always start with gratitude. Gratitude is a practice, and I would not be here if it wasn't for the people who came before me. First one I would like to acknowledge is Jerry Moe. He was the former national director of the Betty Ford Center's children's program, and he really partnered with Mrs. Ford in recognizing what does it mean to include children in this conversation. How do we talk about something that feels so lofty and sometimes we don't lack the words or there's too many words to explain it? How do we include children in that? And he's been a global influence on how he's done it. And most importantly, he was a leader who always had his door open. So no matter how small or big my question was, he always had time. And I think that's just a testament to really wonderful leadership and really helping the next form of helpers bloom and blossom. The next is the National Alliance for Children's Grief. This is an NECG. You can be a member as well, but really what it is, it's a collection of grief professionals, clinicians, programmatic, non-clinical leaders that come together and talk about best practices for grief-informed care. And so without that and having the accountability and opportunity to lean into all of these different ways, you know, it's how we keep the practice strong, salient, and that no children grieve alone. And so just to let you know, this is actually lives in our toolkit as well. So I know Zach dropped the link. We'll actually talk about it more tomorrow. So don't worry, you'll get all of these good things. And then my personal gratitudes, one for my family. When I became a mother, I was doing this work before I became a mom, but once I became a mom, I didn't take off that hat, even when I show up in my professional realms. And so I always give that lens and honor that, as well as my grandfather here, who immigrated from the Philippines. And he was uh, a practitioner in the Philippines, helping with the vaccinations of malaria back in that time. And then he came here and worked as a nurse with my grandmother. The worried gentleman on the upper left is my father. So, you know, and he is a kind, gentle spirit as well. So I like to think that there's a legacy of helpers that I'm supporting and upkeeping as we continue this work. And so I am going to pause right here because whenever I try and do my video share, you all don't see it the way you're supposed to. So Ambrosia is going to share a little bit about Liam. So you might have seen Liam. That's how you might have found us, but he's been our spokesperson to just understanding why this topic is salient and needed.
Meet Liam. He lost his mom to drugs and alcohol. Liam's grief often goes unaddressed because people just don't know what to say or where to start. That's where Circle of Care comes in. We provide free online grief education and resources available to all natural helpers. To learn how to help our children, visit IllinoisFamilyResources.org to register for the Threads of Hope training.
Thank you, Ambrosia. So Liam is someone that we wanted to recognize, just would help people recognize when we're talking about substance use disorder, when we're talking about drugs and alcohol, when we're talking about a death related to it. How do we anchor it around what this project was supposed to be about? Because there are many parts of substance use disorder we can get into, right? We can talk about policy, the war on drugs, certain components. We can talk about the fentanyl epidemic that's going on right now. There are so many pieces, but to funnel our focus, we wanted to make sure that we were, as everything you will learn in this training pertains to the child and the family system that supports them, right? How can we help those smallest that have such a large impact? And so as I pop back on my Canva here. I just wanted to put up some pictures of children. So whether you work with toddlers, elementary school, teens, young adolescents, that this is where we're going to be focusing all of our resources and strategies around. And so as we move through each of these, if you want to anchor and focus on one of these adorable little faces, or if you have a family in mind, whether it's your own or someone you work with, that how you want these resources to be funneled with, I just want you to keep them in your visualization, keep them anchored in your approach as we move forward. And as you notice in the background of these little cute little kiddos are adults, because children don't exist in a vacuum, right? They're not siloed. They are impacted by their relational systems in their home and what those are connected through education, through our community. And so what are we doing to really create a holistic approach that includes all the helpers in the room? And so we have one more poll that I shifted up, Zach, so that we want to just give, and then you'll have a pre and post to this. So this is just to measure, did this help? And so if you can come in from the beginning and just answer these all honestly, 4 easy questions. And they are, I feel confident in supporting children who have lost a loved one due to a drug or alcohol related death. Strongly disagree to strongly agree. I feel comfortable talking with children and teens regarding substance use. I feel comfortable talking with children and teens regarding grief. And I feel confident in my ability to collaborate with my community. Okay, and I'm going to let you all continue filling out the poll. But as we're going, I just want to give a couple of acknowledgments. If you've noticed, this training is very collaborative, and what we wanted to do is ensure that we weren't just talking to one particular field, whether you're in social work or treatment and recovery or clinical, that we really had an opportunity to bring in the community, right? All different parts of the community need to be informed. We understand what happened when there's not enough around grief literacy or mental health understanding, as well as substance use disorder. All of a sudden we see how certain systems are not informed, right? And then we are not able to collaborate and work together. So there is a community of helpers, including the natural helpers. We've had parents trying to work within their home. And so this was a wonderful way to be like, hey, I didn't know these resources exist. I didn't know you were in my neighborhood. So we're all here, we're here together. And so to recognize that some people are coming here from a professional stance, but just due to the fact that we're talking about grief and loss in general, grief and loss is part of the human experience, which means as we go through some of these models and modules, you might find yourself recognizing your own personal experience being tied to certain of the framework or things that we're talking about. If that does happen, please know that the first priority is you. Take care of yourself, and then we will be here and taking care of the rest of it. But you are the priority, and so just recognize that that might happen. It tends to happen, and that's okay. And if you need to turn off your video and take care of yourself, please do. And then this is 2 days of training. We're here for the next 12 hours roughly together. Whew, you're all so brave, and thank you for being here. But that's a lot of information. So sometimes when you get that much information, you walk away and you're like, I'm in overwhelm. What was that? What I'm going to be effortlessly doing is at the end of each model, giving you some core takeaways so you can see what was all that for. But if you find out that those takeaways weren't what you took away from it, it might be a story, it might be one strategy, it might be one technique. It is up to you, because you're all helping communities in a completely different way, and I want to honor that. So this is the Threads of Hope training. You know, the objectives are to really learn about substance use, mental health, and grief practices that are grief informed to better support the knowledge. Because let's be honest, not only in substance use disorder, mental health, and grief, there are a lot of myths and misconceptions that control the narrative on a large scale. So what can we do to dismantle that and replace it with evidence-based practices that are helpful? Integrate strategies that consider child development, family-centered, and systems-based approach. Again, children do not exist in silos. So what are we doing to create long-term support and care for kiddos? And what are the easy, simple things? Whether you're an educator, a coach, or a parent, what are those strategies that they can help build in the home that can help support children? And so I just want to say that as we put these pieces together, you might notice you're like, we're not talking about substance use disorder or grief and loss for the first part of this day. I just want to let you know, I understand if you're like, I really wanted to get into that intervention stuff. A lot of that will happen at the second part of the day and in day 2. But what we want to do is build hope, because we want you to recognize, and I feel like everyone here recognizes, no children are the same. Even if you know that there's certain themes that they're dealing with that you've seen before, you have to come in with the approach as a learner. And so if we're going to do that, we're just going to build some of those components of what to look for, how to build context with these children before implementing a grief strategy or implementing an activity that talks about drugs and alcohol, because there are certain components like their culture, the stigma that children face, and where they're at developmentally and in their family dynamics. So we'll be going into that because that's how we're going to build the hope. And this slide is just to remind me and you that I promise that every 50 minutes to 1 hour, I will give a break. We all can get that Zoom fatigue looking at a screen. I am empathetic to that so that you can actually step away, take care of any natural functions you need to, take care of any work functions. So every 50 minutes to an hour, we will have a 5 to 10 minute break so you can stop looking at the screen and take care of those needs. And we will also have an hour lunch. And so before we go into it a little further, I inserted this slide because I just wanted to put a model in here that understands why are we breaking it down over 2 days, right? We've seen this training done in an hour, 2 hours, but sometimes we've seen it done over a week. And we wanted to recognize that we brought people in from many different fields, and to recognize that each of us probably support in one of these areas or more. So there's awareness and social literacy that more talks about what is our cultural understanding in grief and loss. What do we see is being heard? What is understood? What are the values around it? General support information. This might be pertaining to parents, the information systems, how they access resources, what they know. Extra support like groups, and resource centers, organizations, and all those components. And then high risk and needs, which are therapeutic, one-to-one approaches, and all of those different components, first responders. But what this tells us is that if any of these are lacking or are not appropriately resourced, it puts pressure on the other 3, right? So think of like a balloon. If each part of these had a part of a balloon, if I were to squeeze one part of the balloon, it doesn't disappear, right? That pressure just goes to a different part, and those other areas have to compensate. So what we're hoping to do is really inform each of these levels together so that we can have a more robust way of knowing, well, if this, what other resources are out there? Because usually after a loss, most people, the only thing that they can think of is therapy. But there are a lot of different options out there for families. And so if we are increasing our awareness around those, we can also increase our approaches that are inclusive of all. And so how we traditionally look at services is more of in a linear fashion, right? So it's the before a loss or challenge has occurred, which is the prevention, all of those risk management, right? You're trying to introduce those opportunities. The intervention, immediate support after a loss. And so you can think of intervention or crisis response is how it tends to be framed as. And then postvention work. What are those ways that we introduce in resources that reduce long-term challenges? And so we kind of look at it before, middle, and end. And so if you had to look at your services, your title, or what you do in the chat, please write, which one do you think you are? Are you one of them, both of them, all of them? And then you just use the chat to say where you think your services or your role falls. Prevention, Katie, prevention as well. All, Tina. All, prevention, intervention, all 3. Lisa, prevention and intervention. Yes, as a mom, thank you. As parents, where are all of them? Prevention, postvention. Yes. Prevention and intervention, post-vention, all three. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yes, it was kind of a little bit of a trick question. It really is all of you, wherever you're at, you're in all three, right? Even if you're post-vention or intervention, you are doing preventative work for their future. So when we start looking at that from more of a fluid cyclical level, that there's always this opportunity to create more preventative resources that support when inevitable and grief and loss occurs. What are those components? So if we shift our focus to more recognizing how we all interact with one another, then we start to understand we also need to know what each other does. And so this is why we're here as a community. I love the chat. So please, if you have questions, just keep them coming through there. If you want to share experience or share story, please utilize it. Seeing the chat active and alive is so helpful to create community amongst you all. But then if you also have a question, I bet someone else in here has it as well. And Zach, Ambrosia, and then Terry will keep me accountable to making sure those are answered. And so just to heighten the prevalence, that 1 in 10 children live with someone who is struggling with drugs and alcohol. And that's according to SAMHSA. So when we recognize that when we look at our classrooms, when we look at our neighborhood, when we look at just how that shifts, we start to see all of a sudden, even though it might not be being talked about, there are children who are being impacted by this. And then furthermore, according to Judy's House, who did the Children's Bereavement Estimation Model with New York Life Foundation, 1 in 5 bereaved children is due to a substance use related death or overdose. And so all of a sudden the number becomes even more prevalent. And so specifically the state of Illinois, the data show that 1,216 Illinois children lost a parent to a fatal overdose in 2022. That's a pretty significant number. And when we think about it, this says parent, but if we want to be inclusive of culture and not quantify what a nuclear family, like not just a nuclear family, but what a family is, we can start to see that number probably rises even more when we include all of those people. And so what can we do to help build this? And we're going to start with an activity, okay? So like we said, it's virtual, but we're going to be as interactive as possible. And so this first activity is actually going to lean into the art of play. You'll notice that I do that throughout the entire presentation and training. And we are going to have story time. Bet you all didn't think we were going to have story time. So get cozy. We're going to go through a story together. As I am reading this story, you can take out your notes, you can write down whatever you'd like to. Pay special attention to the different characters that I introduce. At the end of this story, there are going to be 3 questions that you are going to answer. After you answer those 3 questions, we are actually going to put you into groups. And then you are going to collaboratively talk about those answers and maybe elect a spokesperson to share those answers when we come back together. Okay? I'll repeat those instructions at the end, but for now, just get cozy and let's go through this story together. So this is about the Saturday in the park. It was a warm Saturday morning in the bustling city park. The place was alive with the sounds of children's laughter, dogs barking, and the rhythmic steps of joggers. Among the crowd were 5 individuals whose paths crossed in a way that would stay with them forever. First, there was Mrs. Evelyn, an elderly woman in a wide-brimmed hat. She sat on a bench feeding the pigeons, her wrinkled hand moving with practiced ease. Evelyn had been coming to this park every weekend for years, but today she seemed more watchful than usual, clutching her handbag tightly when anyone passed by too close. Nearby, Raj, a young man in his mid-20s, jogged by wearing a hoodie and headphones. His pace was steady, but his eyes darted around, as if he was scanning the park for something or someone. Raj had grown up in the neighborhood, but was new to running in the mornings. In the playground, Lisa, a single mother of 3, sat on a bench scrolling through her phone. She wore scrubs from her overnight shift at the hospital, her exhaustion evident in the dark circles under her eyes. Every so often, she glanced up to make sure her children were playing safely, but her focus kept drifting back to her screen. Then there was Darnell, a teenager dressed in oversized clothes and a baseball cap. He leaned against a tree near the basketball court, bouncing a ball absent-mindedly. Darnell didn't interact with anyone, but his intense gaze seemed to follow every movement in the park. Finally, Sophie, a sharply dressed woman in her 30s, strolled through the park with her small dog. She held her head high, hearing heels clicking against the pavement. Sophie glanced at her watch often, her expression one of impatience, as if she were late for an important meeting. As the morning unfolded, a commotion broke out near the playground. A young girl was crying, her hands clutching her knee after a fall. People nearby froze, unsure of what to do. Evelyn stood up, but hesitated, clutching her bag tighter. Raj pulled off his headphones and started towards the girl, but stopped short when Sophie, heels and all, darted past him and knelt by the child, offering comforting words. Lisa rushed over from the bench, her phone still in hand, and began to inspect the girl's knee. Darnell lingered in the background, but when he saw the girl's older brother looking frantic, he walked over and handed the boy his basketball to calm him down. In the end, the girl was fine, and everyone went their separate ways. But for the people in the park, their impressions of each other had already been formed. So, based on that story, I want you to take a moment to think of the 5 characters: Evelyn, Raj, Lisa, Darnell, and Sophie. And take a moment just to rank them from maybe your least favorite to most favorite character. Who would be considered your least favorite to most favorite, or most to least? Second, take a moment. What assumptions did you make about each character as they were introduced to you? And did the incident with the little girl change your perception of the characters, if at all? So again, rank your characters: Evelyn, Raj, Lisa, Darnell, and Sophie from most to least favorite. Any assumptions you might have had, and if the incident with the little girl changed that perception. All right, so what we're going to do is we will now break up into breakout rooms of, I believe it was 5, right, Zach? 5 people per breakout room. And take a moment to introduce yourself to one another. But we will take 10 minutes and you will be able to go through these different questions together and let us know. Elect someone who would like to talk when we get back. And you can tell us if there was a consolidation of answers, if there was any agreement, or just what that process was like for you all. And what I'll do so that you have these questions, Zach will broadcast them, but I will also screen share this for the first 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes while you're in there. So you can just have a couple more minutes to look at it before I take them down so you can all see each other. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, we'll discuss them when we get back. Thank you for that. Okay. We'll see you back in 10 minutes, and I will make sure that these are up in your breakout room. I think that's everyone. And so back together, those questions. Would anyone like to unmute and talk about the ranking process? Any observations on what that looked like? Assumptions. Sometimes when we start with one of the questions, we start to naturally answer all of them. Shay.
Yeah, I like to always go first. That way, I get it over with. So our group talked a lot about not liking ranking people. And so really, instead of ranking them on any kind of value as a person, it was more about how we might see connections with people, or who we have worked with and how we relate to those. I gave the example of I am not a runner, so I least identified personally with Raj, but that doesn't make his value any less. You can
Mm.
tell us social workers do not like to rate people that way.
Awesome. Thank you, Shay. And that's not the first time we heard it, right? It's uncomfortable to rank. That process of telling you like, who do I have to like the most in this situation? So thank you. I would assume there are some people that felt the same in there. Tina.
Hi, I'm the nominated spokesperson for my group. So we didn't really rank, but what we did do was who stood out the most to us, and that was Sophie and Darnell. Yep, with least being like we talked about was Mrs. Evelyn.
Okay. Anything about Sophie and Darnell you want to share? About why they
Yeah,
stood out?
so for myself included, like Sophie and Darnell took us most by surprise, like as far as who we assumed they were and how they would react to something like that and how they actually reacted. We were very impressed with that. And I even felt guilty. Like I thought Darnell was, trouble in the park, right? But he definitely like stepped out of himself to help the boy who was worried about his sister, and Sophie, like she was impatient, like her appearance seemed snooty, right? Like not one to have empathy or want to help outside of her bubble, but she did. And so I definitely felt bad for my assumptions on both of them.
Thank you, Tina. Right. And the descriptive factors, she has her heels, she was possibly impatient. So those factors were changing the perception of it all. I think we've not the first time we've heard that, right? So thank you, Tina, for sharing that. And Darnell. Rose. I don't know if I
You're
lost her.
muted.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I forgot to take myself off mute. Sorry. Sorry. All right. Sorry, go back to our rankings of we all were on the same page in regards to from the most to the least, but our perspectives were a little bit different in regards to our assumptions of each character and some things. And so in our group, we have Sophia, obviously ranked her as the most important in our group in regards to our original perspective of her being a businesswoman, not necessarily thinking and like having the empathy approach or anything like that per se, focused. And but obviously she surpassed and stepped in. And then in our group, some moms in my group were like, they identified with Lisa being the single mom, working, multitasking and, doing many things at once, letting her kids be kids, but there's a need, we rise to the occasion and we step in. And Lisa was ranked number 2 most favorite. And then obviously, Darnell actually took us all by surprise, due to his character. But in regards to stepping up and giving the ball, but that showed his empathy actually in the end. And his true character was showing empathy and kindness at the end. Whereas Raj and Mrs. Everlyn, Raj was rated as a 4 because he kind of just stopped. He didn't really do anything once Sophia took action. And then Mrs. Evelyn, the elderly woman, didn't do nothing. We ranked her as the least of actions in regards to. So that was just like our group's perspective in regards to that story.
Thank you, Rose. And thank you for sharing, right? Even with the ranking, there was different perspectives that informed that context. So it's important to look at. All right. I'm gonna make sure I say this right, correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong. Ismene?
Ismini.
Ismene. Thank you.
Ismini. Yeah. Or I go by Izzy. So for ours, I know we all had problems ranking people. We felt we didn't have like enough information for the rankings. We definitely had assumptions to start out with. And once again, like it's been said, Sophie and Darnell tended to be in their own world, off to their own thing. We related a lot to Lisa, being the fact that we had a couple of us, myself and another one, that were single moms in the room. So we understood like the importance of being able to have that time on your phone, even though it seems like they're not engaged, to break away. We did talk about how surprised we were once again with Sophie and Darnell being the ones to initiate and go to that. Lisa, once again, we said it wasn't surprising. We already considered her a helper for the fact that she was in Scrubs, I think. So she was already classified as a helper. And Raj, I brought up the point about Raj, he was the one to initiate it, but then once he saw Sophia stepping back, that was a thing. But was that, once again, did that have any connection to him being a male, and how common it is for a woman to go help a child rather than a male to go help one, and how that could have been part of his instincts to stop at that point too.
Ooh, I like the context seeking, right? What are those different, like even social norms that kind of play a role in comfort and leaning in. And then you brought up something interesting, the expectation around Lisa as a helper, right? So that her bar kind of shifted compared to everyone else because of the scrubs. All right, thank you. John?
Yeah, so we were kind of similar with everybody else as opposed to like giving them a ranking system. It was more interesting that everybody kind of picked someone like, oh, this person stood out to me for X reason. And then we kind of went into our discussion about like all the preconceived notions we had based on just like the first half of the story. About how like the one of the individuals in our group was, a mother of three and talked about, well, she wished she'd been off her phone. So we talked about, well, maybe she was on call from the hospital and that's why she was on her phone so much. And then we went into like, I kind of related with Darnell because based on his clothing or his exterior, it seemed like you already had a preconceived notion about him, and then it turned out that it wasn't. He was actually empathetic and showed some awareness. I picked on Raj because running makes me want to throw up. Nothing against him personally, I'm just not a runner. But it was, yeah, it was interesting that everybody stopped and helped because, I mean, coming from a law enforcement background, we talked about that too. Is like that's not always the case. Even Raj, who didn't get as involved, could have very easily been like, that's not my kid. I'm going to keep running, do my thing. So, but it was a good discussion.
Thank you, John, for that. And recognizing sometimes when you can relate, the empathy, right? To be able to like personally relate, it changes your perception. You have more nuance to that. So I think there's, you mentioned law enforcement, just the, initial expectations when someone's looking at you. And interesting enough with also Lisa, we've heard from people before, either her being on the phone and being that exhausted parent, they're like, no, 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 I totally get it. And then having that very, different reaction of, I would never. So there's a spectrum there of relating or not relating to it, right? Christina.
Okay, sorry. Just one moment. Because, okay, where am I at? Okay. Do two things at once here, actually three things. I'm on my phone, my other iPad, and trying to answer, listen to another meeting. It's like, oh my God. All right, here we are. Actually, the five of us young scholarly people decided that we would not rate, because you know what, it's really hard to rate people, and it almost seems unfair, because it's like, how do you like, or I mean, how do you put, like, who's at the top? I mean, in any case, we just couldn't do it. And then with all the little different stories, we decided that you just can't judge a book by its cover, because the people that you least expect, to do something, they do. And the ones that you expect to do, they don't. So guess what? That's the moral to the story. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Thank you, Christina.
That's our opinion.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Of course. Thank you for contributing. Samantha.
There we go. Good morning. So I think our assumptions were, that's how we kind of gave our rating, or ranking, I'm sorry. So the least, or the assumption was Sophie was our least, the least, no, we gave her a number 5, or ranking it from the, that way. And then, we said Darnell. I personally said, teenagers sometimes can be empathetic, sometimes they don't care. So that's where I kind of gave my opinion on that. From there, we went to Raj. Also, I mentioned again, or we shared being young, maybe, not as attentive And then Lisa, and then Miss Evelyn. We gave Miss Evelyn the number 1 spot. We did mention a lot how we didn't agree with the whole cell phone issue or usage. We would have wished that Lisa was probably not on her phone and just attentive to what was going on. We didn't give her any grace there. But at the end, you know, our perception, we were off, but we all were in agreement that Sophia and Darnell obviously did surprise us and they came through. So that's the route we went.
Thank you, Samantha. I like the sharing about how it was brought to each, right? And the diversity and all of that. Emily.
Hi, everyone. We don't have too much different information to share, but we did have a hard time landing on a ranking. We have 5 different perspectives, and we did discuss that some of the details of each character shaped our perspective and made us curious. And by the end, though, most of our perspectives had changed on multiple characters based on their actions and behavior choices. And we, at least I had said, I was really curious. I wish there was like a full page bio on each person, because I wonder if some of the character traits, like the uneasiness Evelyn displayed, why was that? Were they all going through something common? And we're seeing it in 5 different ways.
Yes, I love that you wanted a bio sheet, right? That some of us have been, you know, especially if we have work in more clinical or mental health, we're trying to seek more context, right? We're trying to go from that informed approach. So what does that look like? I love how there was discomfort with ranking, that some of us were leaning into the recognition that the perception and from the beginning to end changed. So something did. There was an initial reaction towards the characters that happened. We will go into that in the second part. I wanted to adhere to my promise to your break. So we are going to take a quick 10-minute break here. We'll come back at 10:15. I am not in Illinois, so I have to do the conversion in my head really quick. At 10:15, and then we will talk about how this applies to what that was for, as far as recognizing our bias and perception in certain characteristics and traits. All right, so see you back all at 10:15.